Hey, what's up everyone? In today's video we'll be looking at the Corbin Russwin Emhart cylinder. So this is an extremely cool lock, and in my opinion this is like the best or most secure lock made in the US, and I really love the design. Unfortunately it's discontinued because they lost some stupid lawsuit with Medeco. I don't know why. They should won, I think. But it's discontinued, unfortunately, but there's still some floating around. So let's take a look what's inside and how does it work. So looking at the key at first glance, you might notice that there are little cutouts on the bottom of it. I will explain why later, but looking at the bitting, it doesn't look like anything special. But if I turn this key, you can see that these cuts are actually angled. So they are angled either like this or like this, and it's very similar to the Medeco, but it works like a different way. So why are these cuts angled? I guess we can just briefly skim through the housing, which is nothing too special, just your average housing, nothing too interesting. The plug is a little bit intriguing because you can see that there are like grooves milled around it, and we will also see why. Other than that, it's just a normal housing with a pretty nasty keyway, although it might not look like it's nasty, but it is, because you have to do something special with these pins. So for those of you who are not familiar with this lock, I will show you how does it work. So looking at the drivers, they are basically standards, but you can see that there's like a, I think it's called a dovetail on the bottom. So it's like a puzzle piece, and this puzzle piece goes into a groove in the key pin. You can see there's a groove on the top of this key pin. So if you join these two guys, you will get two interlinked pins, right, just like that. You can see they are basically joined. I cannot pull this driver out of it, I can only slide it off. So this is a little bit awkward at this angle, but you get the idea, right? I cannot just pull them apart. I need to slide this driver off. So what does this mean in terms of picking? So this lock needs two things in order to open. You need all of these drivers to be lifted to the shear, of course, that's normal. But after you lift these drivers to the shear, or above it actually, they need to be rotated correctly. Because if they're not rotated correctly, this driver will just not be able to separate from the key pin. Right, so if you want to turn the cylinder, you have to manipulate the key pin and turn it around. It can actually rotate 360 degrees, and you have to rotate it so that it allows this movement of the driver pin away from the key pin. So this is the extra step you need to take, and this is a pretty nasty and very ingenious design, because it requires you to do something unusual. Yes, you have to also rotate key pins in Medeco, but that's a little bit different design, because Medeco has a sidebar which interacts with the key pins. Here the key pin is conjoined with or interlinked with the driver, and you have to rotate the whole complex in order to separate these two. So how does this translate in terms of picking? Actually, let me just show you that the point of these milled grooves. So of course, if you want to rotate, this driver needs to like right this groove. So this dovetail, basically, I showed you, this little piece on the bottom, rides across this groove, right? So it can turn. So in terms of picking, there is a very specific strategy you need to employ in order to do it. So as in most other locks, you are basically first looking for binding pins. As soon as you find it, you will lift it, you will hear a click, or you will just feel a little bit of loss of resistance. And as soon as you do, you need to start rotating the whole key-pin driver pin complex so that you have the correct rotation, right? And how can you tell if the correct rotation is correct? Well, I need to show you this contraption again in order to explain why or how can you tell. So if you have the wrong rotation, this key pin, sorry again for being clumsy on the camera, perfect, maybe today I will be able, okay. So if you have the wrong rotation, this driver is like above the shear line, but it's not, it cannot separate, or it cannot move not even a millimeter away from this key pin, right? It cannot go laterally. So it's just about the shear, but if you start riding your pick across this key pin that has a chisel ending, as you can see, this key pin will not make a sound. It will feel kind of stiff because it's still joined with the driver, and the driver is right above it, and it's not separated, not even like a little. But then you can start trying to rotate this key pin, and if you have the correct rotation, this driver will shift a little, like just a little to the side, and then suddenly this key pin has a lot more movement, and it will become sort of floppy, and it will make a very specific like clicky sound that tells you that indeed you have the correct rotation. So basically that's all there is to it. It sounds simple, but it's really not. And the way you have to do it, or you should do it, is that whenever you pick a driver to the shear, you right away you have to get the rotation correct, because you can pick on, you can like pick one driver to shear, right? You can move on to, let's say, number 5, 4, and pick all these to shear. But if you won't have the correct rotations, it will be very difficult to rotate them, because they will bind a lot harder, and anytime you want to rotate a key pin, it's you have to release a lot of tension. So the point here is to try to get the rotation right right away, basically, because that's very important. Otherwise you will have problems rotating anything. So how should you do this rotation? So basically it's not that different from Medico. Ideally you need something like pointy, but I didn't have something pointy. I just had this hook in 15,000. You can see it's not really pointy, and it's similar to Medico, right? So you can do two things. You can either hook yourself behind the key pin and start like a little scrubbing from one side. Okay, so obviously it cannot be like in the center because you would not rotate anything. So either from the left or from the right side. You can do this from the back, or if you want, you can try pushing the key pin from left or right. And that way you will achieve rotation. And whenever you are trying to rotate, as I said, you need to release a lot of tension and just listen and feel for the floppiness, and listen for the clicking, or yeah, it's, I guess it's basically clicking sound that a key pin that is correctly rotated makes as you scrub your pick across it. So that's like the theory of it. Of course, it's really difficult in real life, and it can be even more difficult if you have a mastered Emhart, because then there are more of these tiny little dovetails that have the two sides, between the key pin and the top driver, and the interpretation of feedback is even more difficult, but this is like a normal unmastered Emhart, so it's like not like the top of the game, right? But it's still very difficult, and I'm really happy that I made this happen. So anyway, for picking, I used, as I said, this multi-pig hook in 15,000s is V06, and for the back pins, because I had some pretty high lift in the back, I used this SSDev hook. This think it's the steepest one, right? So yeah, these two tools, and then I used top of the keyway tension for the back pins, and then I switched to bottom of the keyway because of this stupid keyway that is pretty nasty, and I just put the bottom of the keyway tensioner here, so I had like a platform, and yeah, I went by this. Alright, so I think that's all there is to say. There's a lot of good videos on Emhart, so if you want, you can watch also some other guys picking it, because there's more ways how to do it, but this was like my way to do it. Hopefully you will enjoy this video, because I surely enjoyed picking this lock finally. So let's go ahead and get it picked. Okay, so in order to make this pick like 100% legit, I will reassemble the cylinder right now, because what sometimes happens is that during picking or whatever, these pins might get delinked, or like they are not interlinked anymore, and that makes just things easier. And the rules of the Lockpickers United state that it's sufficient to use the key in order to make sure that these pins are interlinked, but sometimes it just is not enough. So in order to be completely like legit, I will just reassemble the cylinder here, and I will try to pick it in one take, of course. So feel free to skip this part, it's just like for my, I don't know, satisfaction, I guess, or just want to be sure that I picked actually the real version of the lock and not some without interlinked pins. So this is just something I wanted to do. Of course, it's pretty annoying to do before every pick, but I guess I won't have to get it after, right? Because I'm starting with a got it position. So four. Five. Okay, just one more. Perfect. I will reinstall this cap or this plate. Okay. Right, that should do it, I think. Okay, so we have the cylinder reassembled. Now let me just grab the vise. Everything stays in frame, of course. I will use the key now. Works. Everything is interlinked. Everything is as it should be, and I will actually switch to manual focus. So just a little bit. Okay, perfect. This should work. All right, so let's start with the actual pick. So I will start with the top of the keyway tension because I have some binders in the back, and I need to reach them from the bottom. So I'm on 6. Pretty heavy tension. Okay, click on 6. I think it's clicking, so that's good. 5. Click on 5. It's clicking, good. Super tiny, click on 4 and it's clicking, so that's good. So now I will switch to tensioners and I will start working on these front pins, which for some reason tend to act a little bit tapered, I don't know why. Okay, so 3. Very mushy feedback. I feel like I always have to go back to 1, lift it a little and then something else binds. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 sounds good. I think it's on the shear. I think it's correctly rotated. So is 4. So 1 again, tiny click again, but nothing else. 2 is binding, but pretty mushy, honestly. So I really hope I didn't drop something by accident. Okay, good, click out of 1 and stayed up. Okay, now in theory everything should be at shear now, so I just need to figure out if something is misrotated. So 4 is good, 3 is good, 2 is like, yeah, whatever. I think it might be misrotated as well. Okay, 1 is definitely clicking, or is it? I think that 2 is like not great now. So I'm trying to turn into now. It's kind of clicking now, right? But 1 is kinda not. Okay, so maybe I need to rotate 1, right? So using this steeper hook, it kind of clicks. So I think one should be, yeah, should be good. 2, no as well, 4, 5, clicking just nice. Oh boy, that's just a dream, isn't it? Everything has good feedback, everything feels like it's on the shear, but the lock is not opening. Having my doubts about one, honestly. Oh boy, I dropped a lot of stuff now. But that's fine. I can cope. I can manage. Click on 2 again. Okay. Click on 1. 1 is clicking, definitely. 2 as well. 3 as well. 4 as well. 5. Can be 6. Everything feels like it's in shear. Trying to figure out the rotation of 2 because that one feels kind of weird. I don't know, I'm kind of satisfied with this feedback, so I don't know what's happening. Okay, so I guess I need a little bit more work here. Yeah, I think 2 is the problem here. Not getting honestly good feedback out of 2. Yeah, I was right. I was right. Perfect. So that's like a legit peak, right? Has to be. It was reassembled before. Perfect. So we got the log open, as you could see. I was kinda not sure about the last pin that was misrotated because the feedback can get pretty subtle and you have to hit the key pin at the right angle in order to hear. But yeah, I did that and I felt like 2 is kinda mute, I guess. So I manipulated it a little bit and the lock fell open, so perfect. So pretty unconventionally, we won't be gutting this lock now as I already started with the gut, but thank you guys for watching. This is kinda, I'm really happy with this pick. I was very afraid of this lock, something like the Miva PR, so this is the second of my Nemesis locks I managed to pick, so I'm pretty happy about that and hope you guys enjoyed this video, although it can be quite long, but I wanted it to be like the real thing. So thank you guys again for watching. Hopefully I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye.